Hey, how you doing? Or as they might say in Italian, buongiorno amici, spero tu stia bene, or something like that. That's pretty close. I think that means I hope you're doing well. Okay, I'm going to present this as video 3C. Now that seems like it's out of order because I was up to number 14. But before I move on to my video on scales, I want to talk about scales, and I want to talk about stuff that nobody talks about regarding scales. You know, I'm the guy who does that. I talk about things that nobody talks about. I show you things that nobody talks about. That's what I do. So before I move on to my scale videos, a series of scale videos, which might be called a new perspective on musical scales, you want to keep an eye out for this. Before I move on to that, I wanted to make sure that I covered my accordion stuff clearly and didn't leave anything out. And I went back to videos 3A and 3B, and I noticed that, to me anyways, the chords in those videos, to me, were, I think, the most beautiful chords that I presented. So to make sure that nobody missed anything, I want to quickly go over those chords because they are the most intricate and I think the sweetest, the prettiest chords that I presented so far. So if you'll bear with me, in this video, 3C, you'll remember that I showed you the chords for the song called The Shadow of Your Smile, and this was verse 1. And this was verse 2, and I think I'm pretty sure I demonstrated how to play them. Okay? But now, before I move on to my videos on scales, I want to go back quickly and just take a look at the first 8 verses of The Shadow of Your Smile. The first 8 chords in verse 1. And then I'm going to look at the first 8 chords in the alternate verse that I showed you, so that you get a real good idea of those chords, because they're really, really nice. I hated to move on without making sure that I presented these in a very, very clear way. So in that list of chords, for example, the regular verse, chords for the regular verse, you'll have an F sharp minor 7, and before you would see me showing you with my left hand how to play chords, but because of the camera, my camera phone, it was hard to see where the fingers were. So I made this chart to show exactly where the fingers go. So for the F sharp minor 7, you can see that you have an F sharp bass and an A major chord button. That's how you play that. Okay? And if you look at my charts closely, you'll see letters right above the buttons. For example, here's a P, that means pointer, and here's a PK, that means pinky. I don't know if you can see that, but you'll figure it out once you work on these chords. And I think I forgot to say this in my videos, but clearly this is the thumb. I refer to this as the index finger, and this as the pointer, and this as the ring finger, and this as the pinky. At least that's pretty much how we do it in America. So I forgot to say that. Thumb, index, pointer, ring, and pinky. Okay? Then the next chord is a B7. I'm sure you know how to play that. B dominant 7. And then there's the E minor 7. So let's look at the E minor 7. And that's the E bass and the G major chord button. See that there? E minor 7. And then that F sharp minor 7 can be played using an F sharp counter bass and the A major button. That's another way to do it. Okay? Then you have in that selection of chords, you have an A minor 7. You see that's an A bass and the C major chord button. Hope I'm saying this correctly. God knows. Then you have a G major 9, which is beautiful, with the G bass and the G major chord button and the D major chord button and the C major 9 with the C bass, C major chord button, and G major chord button. Now, I'm pretty sure I talked about these before. I think I did. But just in case I didn't, let's look at that C major 9. You're going to play a C bass, a C major chord button, a G major chord button, and these are the tones you get. C bass, you get your chord tones, all right? And if you do that, if you play those buttons, then what you get are these tones. You arrange them in intervals of thirds, and this is what you get. What you actually get is you get a full chord, a full C major 9 chord, and the fifth tone, which with the accordion is quite frequently missing, but in this case it's not missing. That's what you get. Then if you want to play that G major 9, you press the G bass button, G major chord button, D major chord button. You get your bass tone, you get your chord tones. Now this is a very simplified thing I'm showing you. This is simple. I'm not showing you the inside of the accordion. So this is what you get. And then that chord, if you built that chord in thirds, it would be this. And you see the fifth is not missing. It's a really nice sounding chord. I try to use it as much as possible. Okay, then here's the, hold on a second. Now here's the alternate verse that I like to play. And I think I showed that in the previous videos. I think 3B. All right, and there's some really nice chords, really nice chords. That's why I had to come back and do this. For example, you have an A major 7, and I play it with the G sharp counterbass and the A major chord button. And then here's the E minor 11, which is an E bass, with the G major chord button and D major chord button. Yeah, I hope I'm saying that right. Then you have an A minor 11, which you just slide over one button, and you have your A bass and your C major chord button and G major chord button. So that's your A minor 11. Trying to get a better view for you there. And then that's the E minor 11. And once again, that's the A major 7. Those are really sweet, really beautiful chords, and I had to show them again because they're so nice. And here's some of the other ones. The A diminished 7 with an F sharp bass. Now, there's a problem here, and I'll show you. We use an F sharp counter bass, and we catch the A diminished 7 chord button. The problem is, as I mentioned many times, you don't get the full A diminished 7 chord. The fifth is missing. You see, the fifth is missing. All right? So I wanted to make that clear. And I think I did in previous videos that if you use the bottom diminished 7 chord button row, you don't always get a full chord. Then here's another one, A dominant 9, the A dominant 9 with the A bass, the A dominant 7 chord button, and the E minor chord button. Now in that case, you get the full chord. See, the fifth, that's the E, is not missing because you're playing the E minor chord button and the E is in there. So the fifth is not missing. Then you have the D dominant 9, which is beautiful too. That's the D bass with the D dominant 7 button and the A minor chord button. And these are the tones you get. And you see here the fifth is not missing because the fifth is picked up when you hit that A minor button. That A is included in there. So in the case of these dominant 9 chords, the fifth is not missing. That makes for a really nice sound. Now, if you look at those chords, actually as they would be notated in intervals of thirds, okay? This is what you'd get, trying to get them all in there. And you see, in the case of each chord, they're all full. These chords are all complete. The fifth tone in each one is not missing. So I'll hold that up if you want to take a peek. But these are beautiful chords, and I just had to say something because I didn't want people to say, oh, videos 3A and B, they were crappy. I didn't like it because he talked too much and the chords were too big. But actually, they're beautiful chords for the accordion. They're just beautiful. And I think that's it. So, briefly, what I just did was I showed you the first 8 chords of the verse 1 for the song The Shadow of Your Smile. And I just showed you the alternate chords for verse 1, the first 8 chords. To make sure that you don't overlook those and don't take them lightly because they're very, very nice. And I think that's it. I'm going to, at some point pretty soon, start to make a series of videos. And this might be the title. And I'm going to show how I look at scales, the way I look at them. And if you can mentally picture scales the way I do, I guarantee you'll have an easier time playing them. It takes a little thought. It takes a little flash of enlightenment and a little light bulb going off over your head. But if it happens, it will be helpful. Some people have told me they really love the system. Other people hate it. So we'll find out, won't we? That's it. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for watching. And I hope to see you soon. Good night.